Welcome to Financial Focus, brought to you by Gulf Coast Financial Services founder and CEO, John Kuykendall. John and his team of financial, legal, and tax professionals have been providing North Florida savers and investors sound, comprehensive financial guidance for over 30 years, helping you to achieve important life and planning goals. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and tune in for more Financial Focus by visiting gulfcoastfinancial.net.
And welcome into the program. This is Financial Focus, brought to you by the best of the best in financial services, as named by the readers of the Lake City Reporter, 8 years and running, celebrating 30 years, serving North Central Florida proactive savers and investors in formulating the plans to execute and achieve your financial and lifetime retirement goals. Ladies and gentlemen, they are the team from Gulf Coast Financial Services, and founder and CEO John Kuykendall here with us as always, each and every week, providing the guidance to help us uncomplicate the financial world. John, always a pleasure, and no exception to that this week as we talk about the care that we strive to provide for our loved ones financially.
Yeah, Peter, this is a very important segment. I think that, everyone wants to make sure that their loved ones are taken care of, whether it's the immediate spouse or if it's the children or the grandkids. And so it's certainly something that a lot of people make mistakes in. This is something we hopefully can clear up some of the mistakes today.
Well, I think we spend a lot of time worrying about the level of support and confidence that we can provide to our loved ones, our spouse, our children, our grandchildren, maybe our parents or grandparents. John, that's kind of one of those lingering seeds that is in our mind that bother us on an ongoing day-to-day basis. But if we can plan effectively and focus all that concern into the planning strategy session time and just deal with it head on at that point, we can go about our daily lives with maybe a lot less worry on our minds.
Well, that's right, Peter. But the one thing that most people do not have are estate planning documents. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why it is that people procrastinate. I don't know whether they don't like attorneys. There are a lot of attorney jokes out there, and we could say a few, but we won't. But people have a fear of getting the simple documents that they need. And, a lot of times we mistake beneficiary plans on IRAs as being all I need for my estate planning, because all of my accounts that have beneficiaries will pass. That's true. But there are a lot of things that won't pass, and there are things that people forget about when they're working on this. I remember one thing that comes to mind is I remember one time when I met with a lady, and we were going over her documents, and we were making sure her beneficiaries were in order. And all of a sudden I said, who's this guy? And she said, what do you mean? That's my ex-husband. I said, well, he's the beneficiary on your policy. Because she hadn't taken time to do the simple estate things that we need to do to make sure that we have protected our loved ones. We all want to do what's right for our loved ones, but a lot of times we don't take the time to really review the documentation and have it go over with somebody like us so that we can help them clear up the problems and do the things they need to do.
Yeah, and life circumstances certainly can change, and we need to make sure that those designations stay update with the current and ongoing desires and goals that we have with how we would want things executed. Well, and John, I know, Dave Ramsey is a name that you're familiar with. He talks about his baby steps of financial progress and says that having the appropriate amount of life insurance in place and having those legal documents are pre-baby steps. Any mature, responsible adult over the age of 18, if they've got a spouse or any debts or any children or an income that somebody else relies on, needs to have those things in place. And yet you and I commonly run into people who are in their 50s and 60s that have not yet addressed these things.
Oh, yeah. Even older than that. I mean, it's amazing to me, the people. We've started a practice here right now. Everybody we meet with, we ask them to let us review their documents because I want to make sure they've got the will. And in Florida, we really need, most people only need a will. which tells me how my stuff's supposed to be divided.
Mm-hmm.
They need a living will, which says that in the event that I'm incapacitated, I don't want you to resuscitate me.
But that's a separate document, right? You can't put that in the will, because the will's usually not read until weeks after you've already.
Yeah, I mean, they're not reading the will in the hospital, Peter. I mean, these are 4 separate documents that we need, and it's 95% of the people. These are all the 4 documents you need, unless you have a special need or a special consideration, which then we can work with. But you need the will, the health surrogate form. The health surrogate form says that in the event I'm incapacitated, someone else can make medical decisions for me to keep me alive, give me an operation or whatever I need. And then the power of attorney. And the power of attorney is really important because it spells out that in the event that I'm incapacitated, that someone else can make financial decisions and access my money and take care of me. You know, I always think back to my son, Brent, when he moved to Lake City many years ago. We purchased a house, and they had a power of attorney, but the power of attorney for the people we were buying the house from, it didn't specify real estate. Now, the lady that was selling the house was the mother. The son was the one that was her guardian, but she was incapacitated. She had dementia, so she couldn't make any decisions. It took us 6 months to get it so that we could buy the house. And during that time, Brent was able to live in the house rent-free because it wasn't his fault that we couldn't close on it. But it took that long for them to go out and hire an attorney for him, an attorney for her, a doctor for him, a doctor for her, and have a psychiatrist and all the things that they needed to do, and then go before a judge. So it's amazing, Peter, how a little simple document, and those 4 documents by cost I just talked about are less than $1,000, but we're willing to spend thousands more than that because we just procrastinate getting it done.
Yeah, maybe not willing to, but that would be eventually the cost if you have not done that pre-planning and put those things in place. It could potentially be that, or even more. And John, we've seen and heard stories where that probate process stretches out for years, and in the case of some celebrity estates, for decades. It seems like grandchildren are still fighting probate, which I've heard defined as a lawsuit that you place on your family on behalf of your creditors after your death.
Well, what all you're doing is the money that you earned and saved and you put aside for your loved ones, you're spending it on someone else, and it's not going to them. And certainly, nobody wants to put their family in that situation. I think back to the individual who died, and he was a young man, left a wife and 2 kids, and she was pregnant with the 3rd one. And he had a piece of property in Georgia, another state, but because he had no will, she didn't have she wasn't on the title to the property. And so it ended up that the property reverted back to the individual that sold it to him, and she got nothing. And that was the majority of his estate. So we don't want to leave our loved ones in a lurch by not having the proper planning, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. And things that are easily taken care of and addressed, ladies and gentlemen. These are the efforts that we put into caring for our loved ones, spouses, children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents, those that we care about, and maybe even in certain circumstances, a church, a charity, and an organization is the benefactor of part of our estate planning. But that is the care and support that we put in, and why we go through these efforts is to facilitate achieving our goals and to do so as seamlessly as possible. Now, speaking of those generations, John, more and more these days, we are seeing generations living under one roof in one household. According to the U.S. Census data from 2021, more than half, 58% of adults 18 to 24 live in their parental home, and even 17% of adults 25 to 34 living in their parental home. I'd be interested to see the stats on parents coming back to live with their children as well on the other end of the spectrum. But regardless of that situation, while we want to provide as much loving care and support for our family members, we also need to continue to remember and remain cognizant as a priority our own financial progress towards stability as well. Not a selfish sentiment, but one that is going to help us prevent becoming dependent later on down the road.
Well, the one thing we talk about all the time is that no parent wants to run out of money and have to live with their children. But the thing that we're not looking at here is the number of kids who don't live at home but are still supported by their parents or their parent. I mean, I have numerous situations, Peter, where I've got children that are out of the house, 35, 38, 40, and the mother is having to pick up the rent, pick up the utilities. They're going to cut my power off, so I'll pay the utilities this month. I've got one that's still paying the cell phone and the car insurance for a 44-year-old daughter.
Raising the grandchildren, another big one, John.
Oh, yeah.
I have seen it where the kids are, free-spirited or what have you, and the grandkids end up coming back and living with the grandparents.
Yeah, and it puts a financial crunch
sure
on the individual that's retired. They're not making any more money. And so what they're doing is they're spending their retirement trying to maintain a lifestyle for their kids. And, I have conversation after conversation with my clients about this all the time. I met with a little lady yesterday who her son, her daughter, and her granddaughter all moved back in her house because they don't have jobs. And so, it's her responsibility to take care of them. No. As I told her, I said, when they're gone, who's going to take care of them? Somehow you've got to wean them and get them on their own.
Now, all that being said, John, I know that if placed in the proper order of operations and people are doing what they need to do for their own planning, but they also have some excess and it is a desire to help family members, you help facilitate those kind of plans very often as well, setting up maybe custodial accounts or college savings accounts for children or grandchildren. Those are all things absolutely within the scope of the plans that you help design and execute there at Gulf Coast Financial Services.
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of grandparents want to set up a custodian account or a 529 plan for their grandkids. Certainly those things we do those all day long and we encourage it. It's a way that we can, systematically save and put money aside so that our grandchildren can have an education or have money for trade school or money just to get started in college or get started in life. I know in my own particular situation, I set up custodian accounts for my grandkids. And when they graduated from high school, they were given the money and they could go to college with it, buy a car, whatever they needed to do to live. But it was something that I felt like that over the years we needed to set up, and we did.
Now, John, there are some very distinct differences between those custodial accounts or 529 accounts that are specifically for educational purposes. But I also know that with the passage of the new Secure Act 2.0, an interesting wrinkle and what could be a significant benefit on the 529 accounts now exists.
Well, the 529 accounts usually have a lot more money in them than the custodian accounts, because you can put more money in a 529 plan.
And you don't want to dump large amounts in a kid's lap when they might not be ready for it.
No, the 529 plan has to be used for college, and you can change the beneficiaries and that sort of thing. But after that Secure Act was passed last month, you can put up to $35,000 of that money into a Roth in the child's name if you want to, and not use it for college. And it's still a tax-free event. So I think that was great. That was as long as the accounts have been open 15 years. That was one caveat in that.
Well, they may have made those specifically more attractive in many people's minds, because I know not a lot of people like a use it or lose the tax benefits kind of ultimatum with any account or dedication of funds and assets, even when those assets are intended to support our loved ones. So maybe with that Secure Act 2.0, few potential advantages there with the improvements on the 529 accounts. Ladies and gentlemen, if that's something that you're looking to help give your loved ones, your children, grandchildren, a head start, a boost in the right direction, something to explore, and you can talk through the advantages, disadvantages, and how and where to set them up and fund them with John Kuykendall and the team there at Gulf Coast Financial Services, give them a call, 386-755-9018, 386-755-9018. John, another area is passing of property among family members. That's a big thing. And passing the family property generationally is a wonderful goal. Maybe the primary residence, the roof over our head, maybe a vacation home or an investment property. Heck, you've dealt with farmland, you've dealt with apartment buildings. There's all types of different caveats and different specifics with how property is dealt with when providing for family and passing generationally.
Well, that's right, Peter. And, one of the things that a lot of people make a mistake on is they want to pass the property before their death or before they need to. And in Florida, especially on the homestead, if we wait until death, then the property is passed to the beneficiaries or the recipients of the will at the then appraised price. If I pass it to them 10 years earlier and then the property appreciates, when they sell it, then they're going to have to pay capital gains on that difference. So there is a huge reason not to do that. The other thing that I have found, and I've had to happen in a couple of cases, is where we needed money in order to provide the lifestyle and to live. And we couldn't borrow money on the estate, on the house, because it had been passed on to the beneficiaries ahead of time. And we'd have to go ask the kids if we could, get a note on their house, and they'd have to sign the loan. And in one situation, they actually said no. So, it behooves us to keep our assets. I'm always tell my clients that, you can leave it to them when we're gone, but let's don't do it ahead of time, because we may need that money. We don't know what's going to happen to taxes. We don't know what's going to happen to inflation. We don't know what's going to happen in healthcare as we get older. And so we need to keep as much assets in our name as we can until we pass away, and then have it go to the beneficiaries we want it to go to.
Just one example of why it's important to discuss the considerations of any financial moves with an experienced, qualified professional. You need to understand the benefits, the disadvantages, pros, cons, potential consequences of your considerations, and what would happen if you did execute on those financial moves and considerations. John Kuykendall there, ladies and gentlemen, as that resource. Pick up the phone, give him a call, 386-755-9018, 386-755-9018. And John, specifically with the property, versus like an investment asset, may be very opposite logic there. The property assets get that stepped up cost basis, so may be great to pass on as part of a legacy. Whereas if we've got investment assets of a significant, sizable amount, there is some logic in the potential of gifting that now, because the appreciation that might happen over the course of our lifetime might mean estate taxes. Whereas if we gift it and that same appreciation happens in beneficiary's name, they're not having to deal with those same estate taxes. So it's like per asset, per desire and goal, and per consideration, you need to have those, because it could be very different results.
Well, that's right. And it could be more advantageous to pass it now than later. With the homestead, I don't believe that. But with investment property, certainly that's something we have to look at each and every case, because it could be a situation where it's more advantageous to do it now than to do it later. One thing going back, Peter, is if we pass the homestead ahead of time, and couples have a situation of splitting, then you're putting your homestead at risk, because now, we've got a divorce case and really both individuals own a piece of the house.
Right. Yeah. You deed your property to your child, and you're in the thoughts that adds some additional level of protection, and then in-laws become outlaws. They go through a divorce, or maybe, they get into some circumstance where they've had an auto accident and are getting sued. Now that is an investment asset, not the protection of a roof over your head in your name. So again, understanding all of those caveats, all of those potential consequences, John, these are part of the financial focus plan that you put together, that you help your clients review on a regular and ongoing basis. And it's really all part of that care and support that we strive to provide for ourselves and for our loved ones and family when it comes to our financial efforts.
That's right, Peter. And that financial focused income plan, we'll look at this, look at beneficiaries, and look at everything. Going back and talking about that passing of the property early, it came to mind. I have had a situation where the husband and wife gave the homestead property to their son. They really didn't get along with their daughter-in-law. Well, the son passed away in a very tragic accident, and so the daughter-in-law owned their home.
That they didn't get along with.
It was a very precarious situation for some time because they didn't really own the house. The house was owned by somebody else who wasn't their son. You don't think about these things when you're making these decisions. And that's what we try to do when we look at that financial focus income plan, is take the emotion out of it, give you the basic facts, tell you how it might be, and then let's look at what we can do to protect you and also to protect what you want to have happen with your estate.
Well, we all strive with so much of our efforts in life to provide care and support for our loved ones, especially from a financial perspective. Fantastic goals, but you need to talk through those considerations. You need to have a plan in place, that financially focused written retirement income plan, the proprietary planning process and document that John Kuykendall and his team from Gulf Coast Financial Services offer as an extension of this radio program. Give them a call. You can ask any direct questions you have on your mind and get direct answers over the phone, or offer and take up on the opportunity for the offer for that complimentary review and planning strategy session, taking a deep dive into your financial investment and retirement accounts, the risks that you're taking, the fees that you're paying, the taxes that you may be liable for, how to map out creating income, and some of the strategic moves to plan and prepare for being as efficient as possible with legacy and providing for those goals to protect and care for our loved ones and family. And John, always appreciate the time here on the program. To take advantage of that offer, all folks need to do is get in touch with you. 386-755-9018, 386-755-9018, or visit online gulfcoastfinancial.net, gulfcoastfinancial.net.
Thanks for having me this week, Peter.
Always a pleasure, John. It is a great conversation on today's program. Look forward to next week's edition of the program, as always.
Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and tune in for more financial focus by visiting gulfcoastfinancial.net. The information presented on this program is provided for informational purposes only, without warranty of accuracy, completeness, or suitability for a particular purpose. This program is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. This information is general in nature and not specific enough to be construed as advice. You should not make any decision based on the information presented on this program without independent consultation with an appropriately licensed professional or competent advisor. Investment in securities or the market involves a potential risk for loss of principal. Trading, therefore, may not be suitable for all listeners. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals of growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs. Early withdrawals may subject the owner to penalties, fees, or taxes. John Kuykendall is registered with and securities are offered through Kovac Securities Inc., member FINRA SIPC, found online at www.kovacsecurities.com. Advisory services are offered through Gulf Coast Financial Services Inc., a registered investment advisor in Florida. Gulf Coast Financial Services Inc. is not affiliated with Kovac Securities Inc. or Kovac Advisors Inc. Past performance is not indicative of future results. All investing involves risk. Investment decisions should be based on your own goals, time horizon, and tolerance for risk. Due to various factors including changing market conditions and/or applicable laws, the content may no longer be reflective of current opinions or positions.